Hi, I'm Arthur Rosato. This is Rock and Roll Gallery Shot Talk.
How's it going? What brings you to Rock and Roll Gallery Shot Talk today, Mr.
Well,
Rosato?
I'm a photographer, amongst most other things, but basically, photography is my main reason for doing anything.
When did you start shooting?
I started shooting probably in 68, 69, around that time, my whole career has just been about music. So it's all most of my stuff is music, So I happened to live in San Francisco at a most opportune time, and I went to the San Francisco Art Institute, and so I got to shoot at the Fillmore, which was basically just a few blocks away. One of my classmates was Annie Leibovitz, and she said that I should bring my stuff over to Rolling Stone. And Rolling Stone at the time was on Branham Street, and it was just this warehouse kind of loft place. And so I did. So I happened to be shooting. Basically, I had just come from Woodstock, so 'cause that was during the summer. So when I came back out to California during the summer, I had that. But also a couple months later, it was Altamont. So I was there. So it just worked out that I could had both of those experiences. And so Annie was saying, you just go down there, you have more than enough. And that, at the time at the Art Institute, Rolling Stone magazine, we all looked at it as a music magazine, but on the inside of the first page was an artist's photo. Somebody from whoever would submit a photo which had nothing to do with music. And Annie was always doing that, and I always admired that. But I was a music guy, and I loved music, and photography was my expression, So and I got to shoot at the Fillmore like anytime I wanted because they knew me. They see me walking up the steps, and in those days there weren't a lot of photographers. Jim Marshall was the primary photographer at the time. And so I would shoot on one side of the stage and he would shoot on the other, And then I remember one time I got up to Jim and said, I hope you don't think there's any competition here, I'm trying to compete with you. And he goes, there's no competition, and I got it immediately. So from that point on, it's like I watched where he was and I was on the opposite of wherever he was. And I shot on the stage. Rarely would I shoot from the audience. In those days, first of all, not a lot of people had cameras. And I don't know if they were even allowed to bring them into the Fillmore, but there were no cell phones, obviously, but there weren't a lot of cameras around. So if you came in, you were a professional. So like Herb Green was another one, Baron Wolman, all those people were my contemporaries, but those were like real professionals, and I was just starting out. And so I would shoot on stage at the Fillmore, and then years later I'd ask Bill Graham why he let me shoot on stage. He said, well, you look like you belong there, which is was the greatest compliment I could think of, because in our business as photographers, you don't want to be noticed. You want people to see the band. You don't want to be this distraction. So I've done tours where the photographers are wearing white. And it's like, what are you thinking? It's not about you at all, But all those kinds of things you pick up as you go along. And Bill Graham was great for teaching you on the job what's right and what's wrong, I've seen him grab people and say, get out of here. But he always let me shoot, and it just gave me that perspective. And I came from being a musician early on, so I knew the protocols of being on stage. So
It's kind of like Henry Diltz that way.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I've known Henry too since then. He was L.A. I was in Northern California, so we really didn't bump into each other. I did meet him a few years later when I was on tour with Jackson Browne and Joni Mitchell, and that's one photo of Joni. It was on that tour. That was '72, and Jackson and I we were just finishing up the tour in L.A. and Jackson and I went out to dinner at some hotel restaurant, and he spied a couple of friends of his, and they came over, and he said, "Oh, I wanted you to meet these guys. They have a band, and this is Glenn and Don." And he says, "Yeah, they have a band. It's called the Eagles." And I says, "Good to meet you." But it's like I've met 1,000 people who had started bands. I didn't know it was those guys, because at that time they weren't those guys, So, those are the kinds of things that happen to you. You start to meet people, when you're out of your normal element, And like I said, at the Art Institute, it was a totally different world, and it just exposed us to a lot of things. And and coming, like I said, in that 1 year, coming out of Woodstock into Altamont, it was just mind-opening for every level of photography situation that you could, run into.